Hey everyone, Genome here. Alright, just going to preface this video with a quick introduction of what's going on and to let people know this is going to be the final segment of my visit to the Kentucky Reptile Zoo. And it was just a great time. You know, I really like to extend my heartfelt gratitude for everyone involved letting me take a look around. Jim and Kristen were so nice, so kind, and so giving of their time. So once again, kudos to them. Once again, I'll have their information down below where you can look at them, look for them up online. But in the meantime, please enjoy this footage I took of their tropics housing facility. This basically houses a lot of their more exotic species from around the world. You know, mambas, soft-scale vipers, many different kinds of cobras, basically any kind of viper you can imagine. Tons of different vipers in there. So, and some pretty rare species, which we'll go over in this. You have to forgive my commentary a little bit. I use a lot of lay terms, and some of my observations might be a little suspect. You know, I'm not a professional anyway. These people deal with this day in, day out. I just try to keep a little bit of audio commentary going, 'cause otherwise you just hear me breathing, or you'll hear the temperature control unit kicking on and off. So rather than do that to you, I at least try to narrate a little bit. And of course, Kristen's there to pick up the slack when you need an actual informed source. But anyway, I hope you enjoy. Once again, make sure to check out the entire series. There's some great information to be had here, and I hope you enjoy it and look forward to more, because I have a couple more of these lined up to do in the semi-near future. So, all right. Anyway, I'm done rambling. Let's go look at some cool snakes. Until next time, this is Genome. Out. So right now we are in the tropics room. This is going to be for the more balmy climate species, would you say?
Yeah, these are things that are not from the US, basically.
Alright, so let's take a look around the room. We'll go ahead and start up here to the left. We have quite the assortment of mambas. We have all 4 species?
We do.
Alright, so first up here we have much less famous green mamba. My personal favorite, as far as looks go, the West African green mamba here. Notice the heavy keeling on the scales here. Fascinating specimens. Down here is probably the most notorious snake in the world, mostly undeserved, but it's a very massive black mamba. So-called mostly because when it opens its mouth in a gape, it has a black lining in its mouth. Think of Cottonhead, but in reverse. So how long is this specimen? Looks to be about 7 foot. 6, 7 feet?
Yeah, I'm sure he's at least 7.
Yeah.
The cage, I think that's a 6-foot cage he's in. So.
Another thing, you can't really see it here, but you almost can. They're a very front-fanged snake, the black mamba is. It's one of the most efficient delivery systems for the fixed-fanged snakes. So, but very fascinating creature. It's also the fastest or second fastest land snake.
They're among the fastest. Yeah. Those sorts of statistics are difficult because nobody's ever measured every individual, so
they don't run in a straight line. So.
Yeah, but certainly among the quickest.
And down here we have a specimen I've never seen before. This is a Jameson's mamba, another heavily keeled species. Gorgeous specimen. All of the mambas are highly toxic, but as is the case with most venomous snakes, their temperament is wildly exaggerated, and they make they don't chase people down. You hear stories of them chasing people down on horseback. Not that there's too many horses running around Africa, but I've heard and read this before. So yes, it's all fantasy. So hopefully today some of what we're going over can help dispel some myths about venomous snakes in particular, and just snakes in general. Okay, up here we're looking at, I believe this is the largest venomous snake in the Americas?
In the Americas, yeah.
This is the Bushmaster. I have never seen this specimen before either. Up live and personal. He's looking a little cloudy too. He might be getting ready.
Yeah. She may be. She's, I think, also just is kind of dirty at the moment.
But I think they get a little longer than the Eastern Diamondbacks, but they're not quite as robust as memory serves. But I mean, when they get that big, it's...
Yeah, I mean, again, no one's ever measured every single one, so they're, you know, as measured, they're the longest.
But
who knows?
Now, from what I've read, they have... It's not a particularly toxic venom, but it's a massive yield on the Bushmaster.
Yeah, I mean, they don't cause a whole lot of bites because they're so secretive and shy. So, you know, we don't extract from them a whole lot. There isn't a lot of research going on with their venom, so they're not one that we get all the time anyway.
Okay, so now we have a mountain viper down here. There's a gorgeous specimen right there. Highly camouflaged species. And I won't go through every snake we have in here, but I'm just going to highlight some of the good ones. Here's, of course, is the gaboon viper, also famous for having the longest fangs in the reptile world. Is that correct? Hey, I got one right. All right.
Yeah.
But
you're right. It's, I mean, not that individual, honestly, obviously, because that's not a large adult. But yeah, like as measured again.
And generally, the activity you're seeing it doing right now is what it does at all times. It is a very sedentary snake. It'll sit on a prey trail for 2 and 3 days at a time, just waiting. And most of the causes of snake bite in this species, you can't tell because of the background of the cedar, but the camouflage on the leaf litter is almost impossible to see. So a lot of times people step on this snake on a trail. So that's the probably massive index of snake bite from that species. Down here we have a spitting cobra. We had some footage earlier of actually extracting venom from some spitting cobras. Not this species, of course, but okay. Oh, there's a cantail snake, huh? Mm-hmm. I've never seen one of these before either. Don't they have the tail lure?
Yes.
Yeah, they actually...
Yeah, I don't know if you can see that one's tail or not, but they retain, copperheads have a bright green tail when they're born, but cantails, which are a southern relative of a copperhead or a cottonmouth, they retain the bright green or yellow tail throughout their life, and they do use it as a lure to attract food.
Can't be sure if they like to eat frogs.
I'm sure they eat a lot of frogs, and probably lizards, and cottonmouths are kind of garbage disposals on it. Cantails are probably the same way in the wild. We feed them rodents in captivity, obviously, but
I've read things that
they probably eat anything they can catch.
Yeah, I've actually read that cottonmouths will eat carrion, which is really rare for any kind of snake. Okay. Over here we got some more of the dry habitat snakes. See if you can spot.
The one at the bottom in the corner there is probably hiding under his plant or somewhere.
He's back in the corner.
Obvious, but that's the St. Lucian lancehead viper or St. Lucian gray lance. There aren't very many of those in this country.
Just make out his head.
That snake is endemic to the island of St. Lucia in the Caribbean, so they're not found anywhere else in the world.
Very localized species. Well, there's a lancehead there taking a soak. Oh, there's a cobra that shed. Probably hungry.
Probably.
Up here, hopefully you can see it with the camera, we have a desert horn viper doing what it does best. See what killing at light helps. If you look, you can see his eyes and his rostral horns. But sticking above.
Those guys have the horns above the eye. Mm-hmm. They don't have them on the nose.
I always get my nomenclature wrong. There we go. All right. Green tree python. See, you would think that every snake in here is going to be venomous, but they are all not. Not all snakes are venomous. Most snake bites are absolutely harmless, but remember, never attempt to hold a snake that you can't identify. In fact, it's best practice not to hold them at all. If you look at this snake, hopefully it comes up on the screen. Once again, I'll kill my light. You're looking at actually possibly the snake responsible for the most deaths every year in the world. This is the Equus and/or saw-scaled viper. Sorry for my simplification there, but
that's probably true.
You're actually looking at two different snakes here. And what's fascinating about these snakes, and people think, they'll see an eastern diamondback rattlesnake and they think danger. They see a giant cobra, they see danger. This snake is usually about 18 inches long, I believe, at full growth. So it's not what people typically think of danger, but yes, it has a highly, highly toxic venom. Some would say a pugnacious attitude, but once again, most of, I think, the bites actually occur on trails at night when people are walking.
It's like a perfect storm with them. So Acus in general, the group of species that are in Acus have a very large range. So they are from most of northern Africa through the Arabian Peninsula into Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka. So there's a lot of people in that part of the world. The majority, though not all, but the majority of people there are farming or herding. And the majority of people in that part of the world who are farmers and herders don't wear shoes. So it's a small snake. They have great camouflage. They're hard to see. People are out walking in their fields or moving their goats or whatever they need to do. And they step on the snake. They're not wearing shoes, so the snake bites them. And so that there's a large number of bites. But then it's complicated by that many of places in that part of the world. There's not a lot of infrastructure. Medical care is difficult to access in one way or another. It's expensive. People may not have the money to pay for it. So, if you think about somebody getting bitten in northern Africa, they may have to walk back to wherever they live, find somebody who has a vehicle of some sort, which might be like a motorcycle, ride on a dirt road for several hours to get to the nearest place where there's medical care, and then they get there and they may not even have the antivenom. So there's this compounding effect of all the infrastructure making that snake really dangerous. It's not necessarily the snake itself, it's just that the logistics around it are very difficult. It also does seem to be that the antivenom for that snake is just not as great. Horses don't produce as good of antibodies for it as they do for some other venoms, and we don't necessarily know why. So there is an antivenom available for them, but it's not always easily accessed by people in the places where the snakes exist.
Let's see if I can give you a little bit of reference shot here. The snake's head is about the size of my thumb. So once again, size doesn't always matter when it comes to snakes, but respect all snakes you see. Don't take any for granted.
If he's right up along there, you can actually see where they get their common name, which is soft-scaled viper. So if you look at like the coil behind there, you can see the keels on the scales. And the ones on the top of the snake's body are parallel to the ground, but the ones that are along the side are at a 45-degree angle. And when the snake gets agitated, they rub their scales together and create a rasping sound. And it's those keels catching on each other that makes the sound.
Actually, I believe the worst snake bite or most dangerous snake bite that Bill Haas ever got was when the soft-scale viper did. It almost killed him.
They're not fun. They make you bleed a lot from everywhere. So they're not. It's not a snake that you want to get bitten by. I mean, not them, but.
And not to give any snake a bad rap, I'm not trying to be sensationalistic here. I just want to give people the idea that there's a lot of different kinds of snakes out there, and you can't always judge a book by its cover. So, right, what do we got over here? The forest cobra. I believe these are the largest cobras in Africa, correct?
They are, yeah, they're the longest cobras.
Okay. Some of the most beautiful vipers you'll ever see are eyelash vipers. They have quite the range of colors and scalations. Gorgeous animal. I've never seen a Pope's before. That's interesting. He's got a head almost like a moccasin. Very, very strange.
They have really big heads, and that's a male, so he's small. The females are bigger and chunkier, and they have like really substantial heads.
And of course, the beautiful pit viper, there she is.
I was gonna say, she's been on the ground. So.
Is being shy for the camera, but we can all be beautiful. So, a Moorish viper. There's kind of a stereotypical head. Once again, it's not always a hard, fast rule, but that's more of a viperate head. And keeping with the viper's mentality, they tend to stay still a lot. So, all right, what do we got here? Inland taipan. Okay, now here's a very interesting snake. This is also known colloquially as the fierce snake, and it is, I would say, the most dangerous snake in the world to mice, at least by LD50 levels.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
It has a very undeserved reputation. In fact, I don't think there's ever been a historical death by this snake, has there?
Honestly, I don't know. They're not found in places where lots of people live, so there's not a lot of interaction between people and the inlands. So I'm quite sure that people have been killed by them, native people, where the snakes are
No
but the snake itself is not particularly dangerous because they don't encounter people all that often. And they're raising up 10 young ones of these right now, and their temperament is pretty chill from what I've experienced. Of course, they're born in captivity, so they're used to being around people, but I like them. They're kind of neat little snakes.
How are they behavior-wise compared to other taipans? Other taipans tend to be kind of high-strung and nervous.
You know, I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this, but I don't really think taipans are that bad. I don't have a huge amount of experience with them. We have 4 coastals and these inlands and a couple of popland taipans, and I've only worked with them for a few years, so I can't say that I have thousands of hours of taipan experience, but they pretty much just act like snakes to me. I think as far as handling difficulty goes, something like a Philippine cobra is much more challenging to deal with, or even a really upset large bothrops is much more difficult to deal with. Maybe mine have just always been calm. I don't, they always can surprise you, so you don't want to assume that they're going to be chill, but
see, I would imagine the grab would be a little bit difficult on this species.
They don't have a really large head.
Yeah, not much delineation between the neck either, is there? So.
Yeah, whereas the other ones do have a little bit more distinct, almost like a mamba-like head.
And the reason I'm spending so much time on this snake is because I think until recently it was actually considered the most toxic snake in the entire planet, at least for terrestrial species. So,
yeah.
But once again, I just want to show that if you notice, I've walked right up to this glass and it has not come to approach me to try to bite the glass. So, like all of the snakes, it is not out there to get people. So, now, having all said that, I'm going to move on to what is considered one of the top, the big 4, I believe they're called in Asia.
Africa. These are African.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking the wrong species here. See, that's why I have an expert with me. This right here is the puff adder. So actually, he's living up to his name right now. It's not actually making a noise, but you see it's heavy breathing. So it's obviously a tiny bit agitated, me being this close. But this is, I actually believe, the snake in Africa that's responsible for the most fatalities every year
at least
and injuries.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
So it's, once again, a large-bodied snake, mostly sedentary, but I think this also goes with being trod upon as being the main reason for bites.
Yeah, and I think they're relatively common, and so they have a big range, so you get more interaction with people.
I also believe, now once again, it's not exactly perfectly scientific, but I believe it's one of, if not the fastest strike in the snake kingdom. Yeah,
I mean, the bittis have that large, heavy body, and they do funny things like retain their feces to anchor their body, which is crazy.
We all have our hang-ups.
So they definitely do have a strong strike, and they're very agile. I think sometimes people who keep them privately kind of underestimate their ability to strike, but I mean, that snake can catch a rat that you're throwing to it in the air, which is not what you'd expect just looking at him sitting there like a lump. So they can be very reactive and quick, but yeah, I mean, I know people really enjoy hearing that this is the fastest or this or that, but I honestly pay like no attention to that stuff. So you don't want to be in its way ever. If it's hungry, I certainly would not reach in there or be close to it at all. We just use a tool. So yeah, but
all right.
I'm always impressed with how mobile they are.
For such a large-bodied snake, you know. Fascinating. Yep, those are the ones that can lull you into a false sense of security.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's see what else we got up here. Another rattler. Oh, this is a large specimen here. We got Mexican West Coast rattlesnake. If I can get his hand for you. There he is. Very typical rattlesnake type head configuration. If my camera actually zooms in far enough, maybe you can see the pits too. If you look there by the eye, those giant holes there are heat sensors. I can go into more of that in another video when I do my special species stuff, but let's move on.
That one's empty since that's the one I extracted from today.
All right, we have down here a banded cobra, acting very uncobra-like, just sitting there quietly, right? Not all cobras are super active at all times. And now, this is something of an all-star, I believe, in your collection. This is a mini banded crate, one of the more common venomous snakes in the India subcontinent and all that, and Southeast Asia. Also one of the big four. This one has a very inauspicious cause for a lot of snake bites. Is they tend to either get stepped on or crawl into beds, I believe.
Yeah.
People sleep on the floor a lot.
Yeah, they do bite people when they're dreaming, we think, and they move around at night, and if they're sleeping on the floor and the snake's crawled into their house to find food, then they may, fling their hand onto the snake or something like that and get bitten by it. And they are a primarily neurotoxic snake, so they cause a descending paralysis, so you end up with the cranial nerves tend to get paralyzed first, and then it kind of moves down the body. And if your diaphragm is paralyzed, then you're in bad shape. So they are a serious snake, and they do cause a lot of bites, but they're not, out there to get people. It's just kind of, again, the poor luck of happenstance where the snake happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. One thing that some groups are trying to do to help mitigate snake bite by crates is just to get people to sleep on cots instead of on the floor. And just being, out, not directly where the snake is can eliminate a lot of the risk.
I think another problem too is, once again, along with population of people and people on the floor, but it's a very mild bite. It's not going to be full of pain. So basically, if they're bitten in their sleep, they won't even know it.
Yeah,
they won't wake up.
Sometimes they don't, and there isn't a big wound or anything caused by it. It's very difficult even to find the snake bite sometimes. So yeah,
But fascinating snake.
They're interesting. Their behavior is interesting too, because they're really primarily nocturnal. Though, again, speaking of misconceptions, a lot of people in the private sector will say, oh, they're very docile during the day and they never bite during the daytime and things like that. And I actually took a video of that individual snake a week or two ago of it being very agitated in the middle of the morning. And I don't know what happened that day. He is normally calm, but for whatever reason, I was just trying to remove some shed skin from inside there, and he was flipping out and shooting all around the cage. And
they're very mobile snakes. Don't want the daytime.
Yeah, no. You don't want to assume that just because there's a myth saying they're active at night that means they're safe during the day, because that's not the case.
And actually, another interesting thing about the snake, along with king cobra, it's primarily a snake eater. So
that's true.
They actually do a service to humankind just by their being. So, but anyway, moving on. We have down here a beautiful Cape Cobra, marbled. Out there for a nice cool drink of water. Yes, yes. Very active, apparently, in the day. Let's see. Okay, yeah, he's down in the Cape or South Africa region. And finally, we have a lance head here. It's a South American snake. A rhinoceros viper. Here is a species that can give the gaboon viper a run for its money, and when it comes to fang length, but I won't be able to focus on this too well, but let me see if I can zoom. They get their name, of course. Oh, sorry about that. From their decorative horns on their nostrils, above their nostrils there, so. I don't believe they've ever actually found a reason for those yet, have they? For other than display. Camouflage, yeah. And that will pretty much wrap up the tour of the tropics here. Anything further you'd like to add about any of these species?
Well, I think we touched on most things. I mean, I don't know if I can think. Oh, did you show the Actrodascus? Because those are the stiletto snakes.
It's over here, I think.
Yeah, they're down on the bottom.
Here we go.
Paired together right now. So those snakes have a fang that is different than any other kind of snake. It's in the front of their mouth, but it faces backwards all the time. So if you were to try to pick up that snake in the traditional way by holding them behind the head, the snake would just go like this and stab you. They live primarily in burrows and under the surface, and so they're able to crawl up next to prey items in burrows and small spaces and be able to stab the fang backwards in order to envenomate the prey. They have a pretty cytotoxic venom, so they can cause a lot of damage. There's not an anti-venom made for them because they don't bite very many people. All the bites that I know of from that species were to people who were keeping them. But they, I just think they're really interesting little snakes. There's several species, this is just one species, but they don't look like much, but they're really interesting. And it's probably a completely different lineage of venomous snakes than the others. It's not a cobra and it's not a viper. It's its own thing.
Is it in the collarboard family, or?
No, they're their own family.
Huh, really? Completely.
Actroctaspidae is the family name.
Most people think that collarboards are not venomous, but that's been debunked long ago. So the vast majority aren't, but there are some highly venomous collarboards. So, all right. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and move on.
Okay.